Good morning and welcome to another edition of International Desk, where we focus on global issues. This week, our radar is on Chad presidential election, the first in the country, 3 years after the transitional president, Mahamat Derby, seized power. We're looking into key issues, challenges, opportunities surrounding this electoral process, impact of the transition, political dynamics, the role of civil society and the international community. My name is Mojisola Sholaja, and my guest this week is Professor Babafemi Badijo, a former Deputy Special Representative of the United Nations, Secretary General for Somalia, legal practitioner and Professor of Political Science and International Relations, Chrisland University, Abeokuta. Good morning, Prof.
Good morning.
Yeah, glad to see you here. It's
nice.
been a while.
Yes, nice to see you too. Nice to be back.
So we're taking a look at the Chad presidential election. About 3 years ago, Mahamat Derby Itno seized power after the death of his father, who was assassinated. Let us look back at the process and how it has now evolved into democracy, because quite a lot of people do not really trust that it will be willing to go back to the democratic process. What's your take on this?
Well, Chad is quite a problem case, like many others on the continent of Africa. But in the case of Chad, you have a situation in which since about 1965, when the president Francis Bayo that got Chad into independence was removed in a coup, and they now ended up with quite some civil war that ran from that time till some 1979. So it was a situation in which you have a country that has been difficult to govern. There has been quite a lot of problems. Idris Deby joined the military in the early 70s, had some training abroad, came back into the country, and stood by Hissène Habré, who was locked in a big fight with Gukuni Wede until he overthrew Wede, and Hissène Habré became in charge. Of course, Deby himself turned around and drove Hissène Habré into exile into Senegal and took charge of the country. Of course, the need to look at all this background is to emphasize the fact that there isn't anything new that is taking place in Chad that hasn't happened. He had a transitional arrangement. Idris Deby, that is, came into power fully in 1993, some transition. 1996, he had the first election, and then he perpetuated himself in office from that time for like 30 years, 3 decades, till he was killed fighting in the northern part of the country against rebels. Of course, that is telling you the nature of the situation in Chad itself. This being killed on the front, since there was a constitution, did not mean that the son would be taken over, but the son took over, and with support from the military and his Zagawa ethnic group, it was possible to now claim to be in a transition, and there has been a lot of repression taking place in all that period.
Well, to some of the Chadians, they termed it a coup, sort of, because just like you said, it was not meant to take over power. The Speaker of the National Assembly was meant to do that and later conduct an election.
Well, I mean, this is not unusual in West Africa. I mean, in Africa, because Chad is in Central Africa. It's similar to what happened in Togo, where you had President Yadema assassinate Olympio. And when he died, it was supposed to be the same whatever, but our country was one of those that managed him, Foreign Nasingbe, to take charge of the country against that constitution. So when people are talking about constitution and this and that and whatever, you have to be a bit circumspect. But in the case of Chad specifically, all the pressures that there should be elections, because I always hesitate to use the expression democracy. Democracy, well, when we are talking about democracy, democracy is not going to vote. Democracy means much more fundamental things. Voting is just a very, very small part of it. I easily use the very popular government of the people, by the people, for the people to illustrate the point I'm making. By the people is just a small portion. Of the people is talking about the fact that it's not foreign for the people. We never focus on that. We're paying all the attention. Chad, in the most recent Human Development Report, is 189 position out of 193. It's not that Nigeria was much greater either. Nigeria was 161. And so all these people are contending with Somalia, that is 193, at the very bottom of the world, with Switzerland being number one. It used to be between Switzerland and the Nordic countries. So if you are not providing for the people, how can you be talking about you are having democracy or you are having democratic elections? What's taking place in Chad is nothing other than the fact that there is the deception, which is the case in Nigeria also, the deception in telling people that we are having democracy. You know, show me the lives of human beings. To what extent are they being assisted towards utmost freedom? And my concept of utmost freedom is not just the basic political rights of can I vote, what is the nature of the rule of law, and all the rest of it. A fundamental part of it is the Sustainable Development Goals. The goals specified in the Sustainable Development Goals are crucial towards whether a country is democratic or not. If you are far away from it, then you cannot talk democracy. Let's say election is taking place. Chikena.
Interesting. Now let's look at the performance of Muhammad Derby since it took over power. You know, in 2021, the economy grew by 1.1%. 2022, 2.2, 4% or 40% thereabouts. What can you say about that?
Well, the problem is that we have to, when we are looking at those minuscule growths, then we also have to look at the rate at which population itself is growing. And Chad is one of the very fertile in terms of population growth. So at the end of the day, you find out that people are getting worse in terms of but he has been able to continue where his father left off. Because one thing that you have to say for the Chadians, that they've been fighting since 65, as I pointed out. They've never been out of it. And they are either destabilizing their neighbors or their neighbors are destabilizing them. Libya under Muammar Gaddafi, Sudan under Omar al-Bashir. You find a situation where Idris Deby was a pain in the proper place for Omar al-Bashir. Omar al-Bashir, Khartoum was almost captured with the assistance of the Zagawas in Chad, assisting those ones fighting as rebels of the Sudanese entity. And of course, Omar al-Bashir will also repeat the same thing. They had some semblance of an agreement to halt this in 2016, but there was no doubt that everybody came to accept that a formidable military is you have in Chad. Even when our own people are running away from Boko Haram, it used to be just they be facing them head on and defeating them. And we also defeated Al-Qaeda in the Maghreb in Mali. So that using the military, perhaps maybe if things had been more stable and people are now buying their military capacity, maybe something to export. Of course they do export. 80% of Chad is peasant farming and herders. They sell us cows and goats and whatever, in addition to the little we are making, Niger, Chad, being. So at the end of the day, you are dealing with a country. I just told you that it is 189 out of 193 in the world. That tells you that there isn't much taking place in improving the lots of people, the ordinary person being better off with respect to freedom from hunger in particular, freedom from several other things that we can be talking about, access to, and then the problem of the Chad Basin itself, which used to be a major source, the environmental that is having problems, and efforts are not enough in trying to see how those environmental problems could be handled. So indeed there are problems.
Okay, we'll come back to the seats or true change. I want you to talk about the agreement between him, Deby, and his Prime Minister, that is success.
Okay.
So, but then before we do that, we'll take a short break. We'll be back shortly. Welcome back. It's still International Desk, live from the People's Daily, and we are taking election. Just before we went on that short break, I mentioned the agreement, unlikable agreement between Idris Deby, Muhammad Deby, and his Prime Minister. A lot of people are wondering, is it a kind of confusion? What is happening? He's contesting, Prime Minister is contesting, but then the main opposition, then Yala Idilo or something, was assassinated. So what can you say about this? Is it that they are deceiving the people, or what can you say?
Well, there is an history, a little bit of history to that. Success Masra, was an African Development Bank economist that was dissatisfied with what was happening in his country, and with the death of Idris Deby at the war front, he came back into the country and was really moving strong as opposition leader to the imposition that had taken place, or the coup, if you like, that had taken place in putting Muhammad Deby in charge. And this continued till October 2022. Muhammad had taken powers April 2021. October 2022, what they call the Black Thursday, in which 50 or so people, some say much higher than that,
200.
Yes, some say 200, 300, but the recorded figure being 50, got killed in trying to protest against and as a result of that, Success disappeared and went into exile in the United States. And the struggle continued till he returned to the country. He only became Prime Minister of Muhammad January this year. By that time, the strongest opposition leader was Dillo that you mentioned, Yahya Dillo, that people were looking onto as one of the possibilities in terms of replacing Muhammad Deby. And then in no time they claimed he was resisting arrest or whatever they wanted to arrest him in his, and he was killed and nothing came out of it. And of course, Success was offered the prime ministership, which he accepted, which surprised many people who were now trying to understand what's really happening. Idris Deby reaching out to his opposition and whatever. But it's a consistent pattern that the father had also done in the past. When it pleases you, you reach out to everybody and you thereafter find what to do in eliminating and getting people and running them out of town. Now, I cannot say precisely what is the deal between the two, because it was after Success had agreed to come in to join Muhammad that Muhammad announced elections. And the announcing of elections thereafter has resulted in what we are seeing now, that a president and his prime minister are both running for the same presidential seat. It's not normal that is happening. Could it be that, as you said, there is an accord, a secret pact, that whoever wins supports the other? Or even could it be that there is already clarity that this is going to be the president this time around? All these are speculation on our part. We probably just have to wait and see what that accord will throw out. Eventually, by the time we get the results, which usually is taking eternity to be ready.
Yes, that's because the results will be released sometime 21st of June of this May rather.
Yes.
And yes.
Yes, because in most places in the world today, given the capacities that are available, even if internet is poor, radio communication and several other communication arrangements should not have to wait for 2 weeks before you get results. But in any case, that's what is happening. We cannot be speculating. The fact is they've said that we'll get the result March 21st, May 21st. So we have to wait to see the outcome. But it's not what is announced on May 21st that is crucial in all this, because several opposition leaders are boycotting the elections, asking their supporters to boycott, just like the way it has always been under Idris Deby. Idris Deby was able to change the constitution to make it possible for him to have indefinite term of office once he, quote, wins the election, and he normally won the elections. So what it would be is how the rest of the opposition, and that may then be the mystery of success and what's his name? And Muhammad, in terms of post-election, the extent to which they are able to get their supporters to shout the louder than the rest of the opposition, or the loudest if you separate them and say three sources of...
Well, fortunately or unfortunately, success seems to be more popular than Muhammad, but we won't go there. Let's now talk about the roles the international communities, the civil societies are playing in all of this.
Well, for much of Africa, civil society organizations are very weak. I normally say that you have to transcend the realm of need before you can be in the realm of freedom. If you're busy finding it difficult to cope and live and eat and whatever, you have civil society just in name in the large part. So what have they been able to do in all the crises that Chad has been going through, the fact that Muhammad imposed himself and has continued with that. But the international community that you mentioned, Chad is very important for Nigeria, not just in terms of the number of cows that we import from there, but with respect to security of Nigeria itself. I had mentioned the fact that at some point the military, the Chadian military under Deby became reliable than our own people in dealing with Boko Haram, and that's because Boko Haram is able to move from Chad when we are pursuing them into Cameroon, into Niger, into Nigeria and whatever, which led to the formation of the multinational joint task force that the African Union assisted in putting together. So invariably, you find out that the MNJTF is based in N'Djamena, and so it is crucial if we're going to succeed in the fight against the bandits in this, or whatever you call them, bandits, Boko Haram type, insurgents, whatever name you're giving them, in the whole of the Sahel, Chad becomes very important. In that respect, Chad has been working closely beyond Nigeria with the United States as well as France, even though now, Muhammad Deby has indicated that the U.S. should leave Chad, but France has been there from the very beginning through till today. And Macron was the only Western European leader that went for the burial of
his father,
Idris Deby. So that's talking about how crucial Chad is for France.
Yes, we have to round off now.
Oh, okay.
And there is one thing I want us to take away, the fact that Chadians in Nigeria, Lagos, Borno, and some other parts of Nigeria, they were able to cast their votes. They didn't have to go back to return home before they could exercise their franchise. I believe that was a plus to Idris Deby. Or has it always been like that?
I would agree that it is positive when you give as many people the opportunity to participate in the deception. Yeah? It is, so if they're going to be, not to use a foul language on air.
Okay, let me spend your bad notes. Okay, that is all we can take on the International Desk for this week. Join us same time next week for a fresh edition. Thank you for being a part of it, and to Prof, thank you for coming.
Thank you very much for having me.
Okay, goodbye for now.